Hi, everybody. I'm Regie Routman, teacher, educator, wife, mother, grandmother, good citizen, I hope. And I'm here today with Kathy Champeau, scholar, writer, reader, all around wonderful person, very active and consequential in the work that she does. And this is our third crucial conversation. We thought it was going to be our last one, and then we got talking and planning, and we got carried away, I would say, with joy in getting to be together again, and decided with after we were talking for a while that before we did, and Kathy decided this rightly, before we did curriculum as conversation, which was going to be our third and final conversation, that we should focus on writing and all of the reasons for that. And that will become clear to you. Kathy, you want to add to that? The purpose of this is we have tried to talk about issues that are crucial to all of us as educators during these tough times. And it seemed like before we sort of got to the end of what we decided would be a nice threesome, that we had left out a big part, not just the writing, but the joy that accompanies it and that whole piece. Um, and recognizing that what's going on in the world is difficult and is causing a lot of anxiety. I just want to read you this one haiku to put things in perspective. And then, um, Kathy, you can talk about why we are centering humanity in our work, why writing. But this is a Japanese haiku. You've probably heard it. Yes, in this world there is grief, but even so, flowers bloom. So we want to talk about the flowers today and how do we get them to bloom? How do we make teaching joyful?
Well, Ricci, writing was a missing piece because it is joyful, it's powerful, it's transformative in my experience. And I don't say this lightly, it actually is magical. And it
Hmm.
begins with thinking about what is it that we really are trying to accomplish with children as we talk about them becoming literate, becoming joyful readers and writers, those two work together. So it became very evident. And for me, this is a centerpiece to the work that I do with kids and teachers.
Exactly. In fact, the title of our conversation today is centering children's voices through writing. Um,
One of
and one,
the Go,
go
go ahead.
ahead. No, no.
One of the things that's so
Mhm.
striking to me as I reflect back on my experiences in school, I hated writing because writing was an assignment. It was homework. We never wrote in school, so you either knew how to do it or not. And I clearly remember I was either in third or fourth grade. We were sent home to write about our Thanksgiving dinner. And I cried because I had actually nothing to say about it. Turkey, cranberry, mashed potatoes, and gravy. And what can I write? And my mother actually sat down with me and she actually basically wrote it with me,
Uh,
but really she wrote it. And that as an adult, as I interacted with a lot of teachers and non-teachers, writing is something that is adverse for many adults.
and that is as true today as it's ever been. And I think I had a teacher say to me recently that the principal in her building has said, "We're not teaching writing this year. Not going to be part of our curriculum." And that is really shattering because it shows a lack of knowledge and priority on the part of the school leader. And so, one of the things I know we'll be talking about, writing is magical. And for so many children, it's a way into reading.
Oh,
Kids
it's
become
huge.
writers before they could become readers. And also, I read research, I think in the New York Times just a week ago, but this research goes back at least 20 years, that the best way for kids to become better writers is to be readers. And so we have to be sure we get that, that we're leaving that time for kids to be part of getting their classroom libraries together, having lots of books and stories, honoring their family history. All of that is absolutely crucial. I think you said last time we talked, when you and I were talking planning, you said writing is the gateway to reading and literacy. And
Mhm.
absolutely that's true. And also that when we're writing for, it's not to pass the test. We're writing for a real audience and purpose. You and I have talked about this, even if that audience is ourself, if we're keeping a journal or some kind.
Well, the second part to my story is, which is such a stark contrast, is as I've done this work for over a decade in a variety of teachers' classrooms, but it started in the building that I was in. And writing was such a powerful, I mean, you can't fake engagement. You can't fake energy. It's palpable. And so we had there was a principal, one of our principals that came around one year talking to the students as principals do, you know, sitting alongside them, trying to carry a conversation, figure out what kids are enjoying. And so anyway, the principal asked what their most favorite part of the day was. And of course we all anticipate phy ed, recess. And without exception, the
Um,
classrooms that this principal went in, the children said writing. And it blew the principal away. And actually, I was a little stunned too that that is how important writing is to children when we center them as authors and writers, just like Mo Willems, just like Cynthia Ryland, just like the books that surround them.
Well, and they see that writing can lead to having agency in their lives. They can write to advocate, to celebrate, to show what they know. They can write poetry, which I want to talk about. They can write letters. They can write editorials. I mean, it's endless, and through and especially if we don't ruin it by just looking at the quote mistakes. Put in a juicy word here, or oh, I can't read this. You need to go back and fix up your spelling. But if we teach it in a way that honors children's strengths and preferences and loves, it's a joyful thing for them.
What I did a lot of reflecting on my experiences versus this astonishing reaction of the children that I was working with. And I realized that psychologically, for me, there were things missing that
Mhm.
were present for kids. And one of them that you just mentioned was a sense of autonomy. I had no
Yeah,
autonomy
yeah.
as a writer in school,
No.
whereas the children, they have the authority. It's not the teacher doesn't have the authority. They have the authority because one of the things we start out with in the classrooms is saying, letting kids know writing is power and
Mhm.
writers have power. And
Yes.
they sit up and they listen. And then if we teach that way, that children
Mhm.
do are the decision makers over their writing, it takes on a whole different concept of what kids are saying in their minds to themselves. I am a writer.
I'm a writer, and it's life changing. It's
Mhm.
life changing for kids, and it's life changing for us. I know right now I'm trying to think of, what can I do as a citizen to do my part during these uncertain times that we're living through. And for me, it's through writing. I can write an editorial, which I'm working on right now, and it's hard to do. But using my voice and wanting kids to know that you have a voice, and writing is a good way to share who you are, what's important to you, and to be celebrated for it.
What's
Um,
important, Reggie, about what you said is you discover your voice and you have a voice because what you're writing is meaningful.
yes.
And you don't, and so often, if the writing is stilted, it's because of the way teachers approach it. Because you don't put
Mhm.
voice, you don't, it's not something you teach, it's something that evolves. The kids'
Right.
voice comes through because they are passionate about what
Mhm.
they're writing about. And that's that sense of meaningfulness. That's the other psychological need that has to be evident in creating writers is not only the autonomy, but they have a sense of meaningfulness, which means that what they're writing about has a lot of meaning to them or the audience that they choose to write for.
Yeah, and this depends on a teacher who really understands that all kids are writers. I want to tell just a short story, but when I was working in schools and doing residencies, I was pulled over by a teacher who said to me before we kind of started, Edward over there, don't ask him to do anything. We've been advised from his psychologist that he's only to do what he wants to do. Okay, all right. That seemed a little strange to me, but all right. And so the children were writing, as I remember, I think it was a second, third grade class, they were writing on what must have been lower than that, probably first grade, first or second grade, what they were really good at. And I first modeled that I was really good at taking care of our cat, Norman, who was a she, and all the stories that go with that. And so we did a lot of talking and a lot of the kids modeling what they might write about. And I wrote part of my story. When I went back to my hotel that night, because I was there for 5 days, and I read all of what they had written. And I noticed when I got to Edward's notebook, I took the notebooks home. His page was blank. Well, of course it was blank because teachers didn't expect him to do anything, and so he didn't do anything. So the next day when I came back and we started with celebration, and I had the kids come up and read what they'd written, and we celebrated each one, and I wasn't focused on their handwriting, and I wasn't focused on their mechanics, and I wasn't focused on their spelling, but I really wanted to know, what are they good at? We were building community. And when I got to Edward, I said, "Oh, Edward, I was so sad last night when I came to your page and there was nothing there. I know you're good at lots of things." And so we talked a little bit, and he was. And I said, "I hope tomorrow that I can celebrate you because you have really some wonderful stories to tell." Well, you won't be surprised to know, but the teachers were flabbergasted, eyes wide open, that this child could write. I don't remember what he wrote, but everybody was absolutely stunned. He didn't want to come up. I said, "Is it all right if I read what you wrote?" But because the expectation was there and he wanted to be part of a community, and teachers just accepted, and I think that is a problem that they had been told, don't expect anything from this child. He's handicapped. Who knew what his problem was? And I didn't see him that way. I knew he was capable.
Oh,
You're looking to
Regent.
add to that, but I mean,
Yes,
that
yeah.
whole notion that the reason that you and I both love teaching writing so much is because it's about celebrating. It's about, you have a story to tell. Your stories matter. You matter. We want to know you better. And writing is a way that we can do that.
But
But the
there is
teachers had to see that. They didn't believe it.
part of that is being able to focus on a child's what the child brings in their assets, looking for what they can do. So
Right.
what your story um, illustrates and illustrates in a way that it resonates with me is that sense of competence. Prior to
Yes.
that, that child probably didn't have a sense of competence until you helped him see that he was a writer. So that autonomy, the meaningfulness, but also, and those psychological needs for me is a touchstone that I go back to all the time to make sure that these help me make decisions in the classroom. This helps me when I'm coaching teachers, is there needs to be a flattened intellectual hierarchy. There's no intellectual hierarchy. It needs to be flattened. And that sense
Mhm.
of competence that we are all here together,
Right.
supporting each other as writers, and we're going to learn from each other. They're not just going to learn from me as a teacher, but we set it up so they learn from each other as well as all the mentor authors that surround them. And as soon as
Absolutely.
that a child knows that and feels that they're competent because they it doesn't they can get started and we'll go from there. It
And
doesn't
it changed his standing in the classroom, and the teachers began to expect more from him. And all the kids saw him. Oh, Edward can write. He's really smart, like we are. I was just I never forgot that. The other thing, I mean, go ahead.
go ahead.
No,
No.
one of the things that you and I both said we were wanted to talk about was poetry writing
Mm.
as a great way to get started. And when Kathy and I were planning last week, and I said, I'll never forget this kindergarten student because I was doing a lot of poetry writing, and in fact, this I don't usually hold up my own book, but out of all the books I've written, and it's quite a lot, but my kids' poem series have been really the most popular of all of my books, and I think the reason why is because everybody succeeds. And I said to Kathy from memory, and this was a long time ago, that Bruce was a student in this kindergarten classroom, and the only letter that he knew was the letter B for his name. And yet here was his poem. And I recited the poem to Kathy, she'll tell you, because I remembered it. And it goes like this. Bumble is a dead bee. No, it's called Bumble. You can see that. Bumble is a dead bee. Bumble is a dead bee. Bumble is a dead bee. Bumble. Could you see that? I hope.
Mhm.
And you can see what was um I didn't realize how smart it was at the time, but it was. This was Bruce's writing, and we never touched it. All we did was put it exactly the way he laid it out on the page so that other people could read it. And so every child, and this was in kindergarten, I mean, some of them wrote more, but teachers were flabbergasted that we never changed it. We didn't correct anything. So this one, my teeth, shiny, loose, lost to my teeth. This was fairly early in the kindergarten year. So we were able to honor through poetry writing all the skills, no matter what, it didn't matter where they were in terms of their letters and sounds at that point. So this was a student you would say is more advanced, but we didn't look at it that way. And I say that about the poetry writing because it's the easiest way, I think, to get kids hooked on writing, feeling great about themselves because they have all the structures to fool around with. They don't need to have capitals and periods. They can set it up on the page any way they want. And it's fun. And we're talking about free verse poetry, which we don't expect kids to write. Rhyming poems is too contrived, right?
Yes, I'm going to share a poem that a second grader wrote that's in the book that you show that. And throughout the year, the theme in the classroom was kindness. And they were really studying how to be kind, what it means to be kind. They were delving into the books they were reading and discovering how characters were kind or not. And so when it came time to write some poetry, this little girl wrote a poem and it's called Kindness. And here's how it's simple free verse. She said, one act of kindness equals one smile. One
Mm,
smile can make a life of happiness. A
wow.
happy child can make one love. One that loves can make a world of kindness.
Wow, that gave me chills. That's
And
beautiful.
then she did, in this classroom, the kids were always self-assessing their work. And in her self-assessment of her poem, a couple of things she said was that I learned I can write from my heart,
Hmm.
that I can deliver a message without saying what the message was. And she has an illustration, but if I hold it up, it will be blurry. And I illustrated like Marla Frazee did in her one of her books she wrote. So what the children are learning is that poet, the poetry um, really she was inspired by the work and the reading and the conversations around the reading that they were doing when she wrote that poem. It
Yeah.
wasn't that they had to write a poem on kindness. That's the
Right.
topic she chose to write. And I
Hmm.
just thought that was so beautiful.
It is beautiful. It is beautiful. And I think writing, and I think poetry in particular is a way to make you whole, that you can get in touch with your inner being. And in my latest book, The Heart-Centered Teacher, I talk about a high school student named Crystal who came from she was a foster child. She had been abused. She had a terrible life. It was really hard to hear her story, but when she wrote it through poetry, it validated who she was, and it changed her. It was probably better than she wasn't in therapy. It was her therapy. And when she was celebrated as a writer, it was just a way for her to validate her life that even though it was really tough, she was resilient, she was making it, and her poetry was beautiful.
You
Um,
can completely turn
mhm.
children's self-talk around if they start out feeling that they do not belong to a community. This becomes that sense of belonging
Absolutely.
is
Absolutely.
huge. And if we write, in fact, in history, we know some of our greatest writers belonged to writing communities. Uh,
Yes.
And
Yes.
so as when they are involved in a classroom in a writing community where we're supporting and celebrating each other and celebrating what the successes that kids have or the small changes that they made in their writing that makes such a difference. And then if you use their writing to help other children see the changes that they made, those nothing is a mistake. It's just
Right.
always
Right.
improvement, ways of being able to communicate so that our audience can enjoy our work or that we can illuminate something or teach something or self-discover something. So
And
I,
then the mechanics become important, like the punctuation, the grammar, whatever, because we always write for a reader, even if that reader is themselves. And I always would say to the kids and the teachers, um, the correct spelling, your editing, your grammar, because we're talking about writing freely. I don't want people to think, well, they just do what they
oh,
want. If you're going to post it publicly, if you're going to send it to somebody, it has to be in conventional form. It has to be perfect, which is the
well,
way it is in the world, right? And go ahead.
when I started before and said writing has power, that's exactly how I position it with kids' punctuation because I let them know you have the power to control how your reader reads your piece. And I
Mhm.
always say, do you want to know what you can do as a writer that controls your reader? And they're all, oh, yes, they want to know. And it's through the punctuation.
Absolutely.
Where
Yeah.
you put the punctuation, the kind of punctuation that you will change how readers read your piece. And so they get all about punctuation. And then the other,
And most of that they're getting through reading, if they're paying attention
yes.
through reading. Yes, absolutely.
Yes. So setting kids up to be noticers is
Hmm.
really important in their writing development because what we discovered is if we set kids up as noticers to
Hmm.
sit and look and read like a writer,
Right.
books that you've already have read, you will notice things. You will notice writing moves that a teacher might not ever teach you. In fact, I have another little story if we have time for it.
Yes, go
Uh,
ahead.
as you know, I wrote this book with Peter Johnston, and he was in our classrooms multiple times a year. And this one day, he was in the second and third grade classroom, and he was standing next to a little boy who had two Cynthia Rylant books spread out in front of him, and he had them opened up, and he was intently reading them. And this was during the time that they were writing a book. They were all writing books. And Peter asked him, he said, "Well, what are you doing here?" And he said, well, I know that Cynthia Ryland is really good at writing characters, and I'm going through and trying to figure out how she develops her characters. And so he's sitting there poring over this, and he said, I also wanted to see how she makes the has dialogue in her books. And he was actually studying the characters and he was studying how she was able to put dialogue into the text so it wasn't all dialogue. Now, the teacher had never done a study on Cynthia Ryland, but she had set the kids up that the authors that you're reading are also your mentors
Of
for
course.
writing.
Mhm.
And so he was learning about things that she had not
Of course.
already, she hadn't taught the class. So then she had this little boy the next day do a lesson on what he had learned from Cynthia Ryland as a reader. So as a writer, he was learning
Wow.
what he had learned as a reader.
Mhm.
And when you open that up, that if you don't know how to do something, look around the room and find a book that's one of your, that you're familiar with and see what that author can teach you.
Mhm.
That's where, when we sent our children in our curriculum, what happened is that learning exponentially increases far beyond what any set curriculum would
Well,
be
yeah, it
teaching.
gives them a sense of power when they see what's possible. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's a great story. I want to talk a little bit because I think this is really important about the art of handwriting. When kids are writing in the classroom, I still really like the fact that they're writing on paper and using pen. And I have a friend who's teaching at Seattle University. I live in Seattle, and she's had to go back to Blue Books and having kids write their final exams in pencil because she used to give take home, and now with AI and with uh, all the help that you can get that way, the kids were not. She
Mm.
could tell when she was reading the exams, it wasn't their work. They weren't centered in the writing. So handwriting, I think, and cursive writing is now being, after being ignored for years, is now being required in about half of our states, which is new. This is an old book, but it's a really sweet one. The Art of the Handwritten Note, A Guide to Reclaiming Civilized Communications. And those of you that know that I'm a big letter writer. And I think I want to talk about that a little bit because this is a great way to bring it into the classroom. When Kathy and I were planning, I moved my chair and I said, right behind me, can move over a little bit, but I have cards there, mostly handwritten cards from people that I love, people that I know. And I've told my grandkids I don't want any gifts anymore except handmade cards. And so this is what they do. This is a this is a handmade, but and then what their feelings are, all handwritten. Now, I save all of these. I do not print out most of my text or emails. But when I get a handwritten card, and the art is hand done as well, I save these forever. And my husband one year, I mean, this was actually last year, hadn't gone out and bought a card, so he just did a little bit. And I love that. I like it better than a Hallmark card. And so handwriting and having things really personal, I think is great. And in the classroom, you bring in the art, and um, I'm all about coffee and conversation. This was taken by a local photographer. I love the handwritten card, and I think it's a really wonderful way to um, connect with people.
You
And
know what's so great about that, Regi, is I'm a grandparent and my refrigerator is
Mm.
covered, and my grandchildren live a long way away from me.
Oh, and you have all their letters. I read all their notes. Of
Yes,
course
I
you
have
do.
since they were just 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 6-year-old on my refrigerator, these
Good.
handwritten notes
Yes.
to me, which are just treasures forever. And when I receive a letter from you, a note from you, or when you receive something in the mail like that, it really is a treasure.
Well, the person has taken the time. It feels very, very personal and celebratory. Um, And I find it a very peaceful act, and I can say things in a letter. Like when you and I write to each other, it's very different than when we talk to each other. I can say things about you that if I said it to you in person, in the same way, I might blush and think, oh my goodness, I can't believe she just wrote that beautiful thing. So I think writing is a way to open up our hearts, right? Um, we just have a little bit of time left. I want to tell a story because this just happened today. And Kathy, feel free to add to this, but I've been watching the Olympics, which probably you have as well.
Mhm.
And one of the things and it's fabulous, it's been fabulous to watch, but one of the things that has really bothered me is that seems to be all about the winners. And if you're not a winner, I mean, you see that a lot of the Olympiads, the skiers and the skaters are absolutely devastating. And they don't get a chance to be a winner again for 4 years. And it might be just like one little error that they made on their skates and they're off they're not in medal contention anymore. And it made me think a lot about how we rely on standardized tests and the high numbers, right? And that, I think gives a sense of competency that is not real.
Mhm.
I think what bothered me about, um, all the people that don't win, they're upset about it, is that it's not focusing on the strengths of, okay, you didn't win, but you're a wonderful skater. And but something happened today, an hour before we met today. The person who won the gold medal as figure skater just an hour ago.
I saw that.
Oh, did you see it? It's
Yes,
Alyssa Liu, her name is, and
yes.
she's the first gold medal winner for the U.S. since 2002. So this is almost 25 years. But what was wonderful was that she didn't care whether she won the gold medal or not. And we know that because she said, I'm here to skate, I'm here to have fun, I love the sport. And she skated with this beautiful sense of abandon. Nobody expected her to win. She didn't expect to win. She didn't care about winning.
And
And so
her face was just lit up.
she,
She had the biggest
yeah, so
smile of the whole program.
it was just a really beautiful thing to do. And it just put everything in perspective for me about what we're talking about today, that because she showed what's possible when you love what you do. And one of the commentators, who was Scott Hamilton, who was a former Olympic champion, he said, there's more than one way to win. And she showed what's possible when you love when you do. She is pure joy because she loves what she does. And my body just kind of relaxed. I think that's what's been missing because not that many of the Olympians that I've been watching, you don't see that pure joy and that grace and that happiness that she had. And that is all about celebration. You know, she was celebrating herself, she was celebrating the sport that she loves. And I see that as our job as teachers, as parents, as grandparents. And when I think about Edward, celebrating what he was good at and what he was able to do. So I thought I have to tell the story. I don't know whether Kathy, I didn't know whether you would have seen that skate.
Oh, I did. Yeah, I'm so
Did
glad
you
you
have a
mentioned that.
similar? Yeah,
I
I
had
just,
the exact same reaction that you did. It was sheer
and
joy.
we want that in the classroom. We want that for the kids. And writing is one way to get at that for sure.
And
Yeah.
that's why I really wanted us to have a time to talk about it,
Yeah.
because that is what my experience has been in all the classrooms where all those pieces are there, where children are part of that community, where they have that sense of competence. There's so much joy in their
Hmm.
writing, and
Hmm.
like I said when I began, it's magical.
It's magical. It's magical. Well, maybe we should end there. I had one quote that I wanted to share with you. I have it. It's posted on my wall right behind where you're looking at. And this is by Wendell Berry. It's just one sentence, but he was a naturalist, a humanist, a writer, a poet, and he said, "Be joyful, even though you have considered all the facts." And I thought, let me say that again, be joyful, though you have considered all the facts. And I think that's so applicable for today, because if we consider all the facts, it's easy to be nervous and uncertain and worried. But considering all the facts, joy is a necessity,
And writing is a necessity
and writing
in
is a
our
necessity.
everyday curriculum.
And collaboration with you, my dear friend, is a joy and a necessity, actually. So thank you.
It gives me energy. Every time we get ready for one of these, it just is
Yeah.
sheer joy and gives me so much energy.
Yeah. Well, thank you. It's great to be together. We want to thank, both of us want to thank Matt Renwick he's our guy behind the scenes, a scholar, author, writer. Thank you, Matt, for putting this all together. This will be on my website. We'll hopefully get it on some social media. If you haven't seen our first two conversations, you can find them on my website. Um, any final word? Anyway, I think the joyful part is hard. It's hard. I mean, sometimes, but we shouldn't have to work at it. The writing is a way for kids to find out more of who they are, right?
And
Is
it's
what
a
the book
world of possibility out
and
there
the world of possibilities.
because
Absolutely.
children are constantly surprising us. They
Yeah,
are intellectual little beings that if we lift the lid, they will soar.
that's a great way to end. Thank you.